The freedoms we have. The freedoms we have are things that we have to cherish and we have to protect. We have to believe that the freedoms we possess are the freedoms that we're entitled to. When the freedoms that this country reflects are the freedoms that we share with each other. When we violate their freedom by being a person that doesn't follow the law or doesn't follow what is morally correct, or the institution that this country reflects in the Constitution is something that we can abide by and can follow and be correct and believing that it's the right thing for us to believe is true for us to protect and also to protect the rights of others whose rights are protected in that Constitution. When people choose to violate our rights as citizens of this country, they're the ones who step over what is the dead bodies of people who died to protect our freedoms and died to preserve and died to make our freedoms what they are, so that they can be freedoms that we have and we can depend on and we can show others by simply reminding them when they are the ones who violate freedom by telling us that they have more rights than us when in truth they don't have more rights, but simply are just exercising an excess degree of their perception of what they think is right. The person that does this may be a person that tells someone to get out of their street, to get lost, to leave, simply because they don't want them near them. This is a problem that happens in places where there is crime. And crime can be something that can make people feel like they are entitled to act on the behalf or an adjunct to the police or law enforcement, and somehow that they have a right to exercise a greater degree of authority, despite the restrictions that the Constitution does give citizens in that way. You're not allowed to do what police officers are do up to a degree, but you cannot exercise your understanding of what is the law and not be a law enforcement officer unless you are someone who can identify yourself as a law enforcement or someone who it can be believed as someone who is of authority in that degree. And then again, it's a precarious road that you try to walk, because if you're simply a citizen who tells someone, "Get out of my street," you don't belong here. I think you looking for drugs, or you're looking for prostitutes, or you're trying to do something, and you're just sitting in your car. That's wrong for them to do. It may not be morally wrong for them in their mind, because before you may have come many different situations where that was true, where they've had to call police and they've had to have people arrested simply because people were committing crimes. But you sitting in your car and just minding your own business, despite whatever it is you might be doing, you have every right to do it if you're parked in the public street. No one has a right to come up to you and question you as if they're some kind of authority, as if your answers depend on whether or not they're happy with you or they're satisfied with you, and that they will leave you alone. If a person tells you to leave them alone and you're on a public street, they need to leave you alone. They can't sit there and start accusing you of things. They can do all they want. The best thing to do is to diffuse a situation like that is not necessarily to walk away, but when you need to measure whether or not a situation is going to escalate, because the person that has not the balls, but a person who has the person who's foolish enough to do that to a person when there is no real reason for them to do it is a person that is out of line, but a person also who may not be out of line too, but a person such as that who approaches someone sitting in their car on the assumption, without having observed anything of the sort, that they're trying to pick up drugs, or they're trying to meet a prostitute, or they're trying to wait for some crime that they're going to commit, or they're doing something completely unlawful in their mind, and they haven't done anything except sit in their car in a public street. When that person comes up to that person in the car and they start to take a tone where they are accusatory, then that is a situation where you let them talk and you let them be and you let them say what they want. And you're going to have to determine whether or not you leave or not. The escalation to violence is something that you cannot predict when a person may be on the street that has had crime to a degree that is severe. And that person may just be fed up, and you're that person that comes along at just the right time who ends up getting the nail end of their hammer or whatever you want to call it. They're the ones who suddenly just blow up on you. You don't want to be in a situation like that, but you do want to protect your rights, and you want to remind people that your rights are not theirs to simply to take away from you. Another citizen does not have the right to take away your rights simply by telling you what they had past happen in their neighborhood or on their street, and that because that happens and you're somebody that they don't recognize, that you need to leave their street, that you have no right to be there because they don't want you to be someone that's doing shit on their street that you're not supposed to be doing. And there's no proof and no evidence whatsoever. Even if there was a person that was arrested 5 minutes before and all the police cleared out and you're on a public thoroughfare, where you can park, then you're someone who can go ahead and do whatever you want as long as it is lawful. I don't know the laws as far as concerning for loitering and shit like that, but if you want to sit in your car and park and eat a sandwich or talk on the phone or just sit there and sit with your thoughts, you can do that. You're not impeding anyone's right to exist, or impeding anyone's right to live, or impeding anyone's right to be a citizen. But when you remind someone, listen, you can't do what you're doing. You can't question me, and you can't accuse me, and you can't do all that kind of shit. You don't have a right to park here. You know, that's a constitutional violation. And if that person responds in such a way where they're like, well, I don't give a shit about your constitution. You're a citizen of the United States, and they start to mock you in that way, and start to mock that, and then you may remind them and say, hey, man, you know, it's pretty serious to me because I have two kids that are serving in the U.S. military right now, and you don't get as far as that, and they just don't give a shit. What are you supposed to do? I've. Well, God tells me this. This is what you should do. And because this is what happened to me yesterday, God tells me, Mr. Rahman, you didn't want to escalate the situation, and you knew that you weren't going to escalate the situation because you knew that the guy had already ruined his own day. You weren't trying to ruin your day, but you were just trying to do something to pick up a friend, and you were parked on the street. That's all you were doing. And the man came up to you, and he wasn't polite at first, and he was very authoritative, and he said that he was part of the neighborhood watch, and that somebody had called and concerned because they had seen you on camera because you were parked in a church parking lot before. And the church has said, can you check on this guy? And he went and checked on you. And then he asked you questions. Are you a member of the church? And you said no. And then you were very respectful. You were very polite. And you told him, you understood what he was doing. And you could tell that he might be someone who might escalate a little bit. But you told him, I'm not trying to be rude and I'm trying to be polite. I'll go ahead and leave. And then he became a little bit curt and became a little bit abrupt. And he started to take pictures of your car. And you didn't handle it very well, Mr. Rahman. You started to get irritated, but you went ahead and you politely left. And then you did something that you did not want to do, sir, which was you took your car and you parked it directly in front, outside the property of the church parking lot, directly on the street that apparently, which you already kind of knew, was his, across from his house on the public street. And so he was agitated and he was aggravated. But God, why don't you go ahead and park on the street? He said, go ahead and park on the street and wait for your friend. You had no idea what was going to happen, but you knew it was not probably going to be good. And sure enough, you sat there, you played your music, you had the window down, and you could see out of the corner of your eye Mr. Aggravated, Mr. Neighborhood Watch approach your window. He didn't touch your car, and you took your time, and you rolled the window down, and he told you to leave. Get out of my street. He got agitated, he got aggravated, he was just straight abrupt. And you told him, well, this is a public street. And he's like, there's a sign back there that says no parking. And you could have moved anywhere and parked anywhere on that street if you wanted to, but he was telling you to get lost. And he accused you of looking for drugs. I'm looking for hookers. He accused you of the things. I'm like, not today. I'm not doing that, man. I'm a legit citizen today, right? That's what you are. You're a legit citizen, Mr. Rahman. And God continues to tell me, if he was a man who didn't want to aggravate you, he was a man who just did not have the patience for you. Whether it now is a question of who you were or what he presumed you were, he just didn't care at that point. You hadn't obeyed him, and you were now a problem that he was going to take care of. And he told you, I'm going to call the sheriffs. And you at that point were like, you know, what am I going to do, man? It's like, I don't want to waste the police officers' time. I want to protect my rights and I want to speak up for it. And I told him those things. I said, you're violating the Constitution. He mocked me. I told him I had two kids serving in the military. That's why it was important to me. That's why I said that. And he didn't care. He mocked me. He mocked me. And then he called the sheriff. And I drove away and he was on his phone. And then I got mad. And guess what? God got mad at me and said, I stopped and I started yelling at him. So you want me to get off your street? You want me to get off your street? That was not the right way to handle it. But it was better for me to disengage. He had ruined his day, and I didn't want to ruin my day because I was going to meet somebody that I care about, and I didn't want to go ahead and be all testy and grumpy. And I wasn't. And I wasn't. My day hadn't been ruined. His had been ruined, unfortunately, because he had started to escalate something. I don't know the history of the street, and I don't know what it was that was going on in the street too much, but I have an idea. But I didn't know anything about this street because it's not my street. And I wasn't intending there to do anything wrong. I was just there to pick up a friend. I was just parked down the street, and that was it. So you have rights. You do. And you have lots of rights. And the Constitution is a powerful thing. And you shouldn't let people walk all over you. But you also shouldn't get into fights just for a little petty shit, too. Amen.